The Engine Howl by Andy Rutrough. The engine howl grinned as the mechanic took a delightfully long minute to wipe his hands on a grease-stained rag and walk across the parking lot, frowning with bewilderment, to speak to Pastor Jerry. "Is it ready?" Pastor Jerry asked. The mechanic shook his head. "Yeah, but what?" The engine howl peeked out from beneath the hood. "But there were no liquids in that car." "No liquids?" "No gas, no oil, no brake fluid, no water in the radiator, no transmission fluid, not even battery acid. Nothing." The engine howl tittered. Of course there were no liquids. What car needed liquids when the road sang like a tornado wind beneath its wheels, and Pastor Jerry's mind flashed back and forth from the traffic weaving around him to the deep life struggles of the person sitting next to him to the mystery of God. The engine howl had spun among the pistons and drivetrains of stock car racers and police cruisers, fire engines and motorcycle gangs, but it had never tasted speed and distraction in such delirious, hair-raising blend as Pastor Jerry talking and waving his hands about someone's divorce or cancer or wayward children or God while careening down the road at 80 miles an hour in his 1973 wild, green station wagon Chevy. That car should not have been able to get here. It should not have been able to move. And if it had moved, it should have exploded, the mechanic said. "But it came," Jerry smiled. The mechanic shook his head again. "Well, it's ready." "Thank you." Pastor Jerry handed him some bills. The engine howl jittered around the station wagon's crankshaft. Pastor Jerry gummed the accelerator, shooting out onto Highway 90 back toward the church, where 5 teenagers and 1 adult would take their lives in their hands by riding with him at 75 to 80 miles an hour up I-65 north toward Montgomery, then to Arden, North Carolina, where a week of summer camp awaited. The engine howl leaned out the front grille of the Chevy, its invisible teeth leering in the 90-degree wind. This was a short ride, 3 miles from the mechanic's shop to church, but Pastor Jerry still swerved from lane to lane, worrying about the teenagers who would be riding with him, as well as their parents and Howard Stanford, who, Pastor Jerry's wife had said not long ago, was clueless as a blue-footed booby. He stopped at a stoplight. The engine howl held its breath, waiting. Then one last thrill as Pastor Jerry swerved left into the church parking lot. 20 minutes late. 4 teenagers and their families with their luggage waiting, 1 more just now pulling in. Howard Sanford stood with his wife, Janie, on the black top out in front of church. The engine howl sensed a frown tug on Pastor Jerry's mouth. Janie was even more pale than usual. She leaned against Howard. "Hi, Janie. How are you feeling today?" Jerry asked as he swung out of the car. "I'm okay, I guess." Howard winked and nudged her. "I've got her on multiple vitamin E supplements. That'll get her back in shape in no time." The engine howl sensed a tight gap open up in Jerry's stomach. Pastor Jerry did not think that vitamin E, the new fad of 1975, would help at all. Janie smiled a wan smile, glanced up at her husband. "Pastor Jerry!" A 9th-grade girl named Lisa jumped up to him and giggled. "This is my friend Julie." The engine howl sensed Pastor Jerry's smile as the girl shook his hand. "I'm happy you're coming along," he said. "I hope you have a good time." Julie nodded vigorously. "Ready to load up?" Howard asked. "Yes. Let's get that first tarp over the luggage rack, then lay everybody's bags on that." They slung the first tarp over the station wagon, set it as an undersheet for the bags and cases. They piled the luggage on, folded the tarp up and over, set a second tarp on top, and tied it down. The engine howl sat vibrating on the engine hood, almost visible in the rippling heat. It watched the teens say goodbye to their parents, hug and kiss, or not. Jerry prayed a prayer before they left. Then everyone piled in, 3 boys in the back seat, 2 girls in the very back, pulling out a Tiger Beat fan magazine to share, and Howard beside Jerry. Jerry shot out to the parking lot at 50. The engine howl loved these long trips best. Wide, rolling hills of interstate with 18-wheelers roaring past. The engine howl danced back and forth from a dump truck full of gravel to the Chevy. It hid in the truck's 20-gear transmission, then leaped forward to a black Corvette at which the boys in the back were jabbing their fingers in an ecstasy of excitement. The engine howl skipped across once more into Pastor Jerry's monologue on how they would grill hamburgers on the camp's hibachi grill tonight, waving his hand as if flipping a burger and barely missing the Corvette he had just swerved past. Howard, meanwhile, sat slouched in the passenger seat, unaware of the abject terror growing in his belly. It was a straight shot on the interstate, no cars for at least 2 miles ahead. The engine howl flitted to the back seats where 2 of the boys were thumb-rustling and the third was staring down at the speeding road, hypnotized by the center lane markers that appeared and disappeared like blinking lights beneath him. It slipped to the back, where the 2 girls were whispering about a girl back home who had scandalized everyone last year by wearing pantyhose to school. The men in the front had gone silent, Howard beginning to feel uncertain about the barely missed Corvette. "Janie's going to be fine," Howard said from out of nowhere. "Aha," Pastor Jerry said. "Yes, the doctors say she needs to rest for 4 hours a day, that otherwise she might get lupus. But why should she stop work? Why give up the money? At this rate, we'll be able to get a nice deep swimming pool in our backyard next year. We've been saving for a while. We'll be able to sit outside beside that pool in the summer. No, she'll get better. With that vitamin E, she'll be fine by the time we get back." "Aha," Pastor Jerry said. Except the engine howl heard what Howard could not, that Jerry did not think Janie would be fine by the time they got back. Jerry thought Howard's vitamin E was a crock, and Howard was being an idiot who needed to wake up to the fact that his wife was seriously ill. But Jerry only said "aha" because Howard was too proud to listen and too terrified to face the truth. "Aha." Howard stared ahead. His voice wavered the slightest bit. "She'll be fine." Yes, the engine howl decided. It was time. This was the moment. Jerry had slowed down to 70 miles an hour to let a Cadillac go by. Just after the Cadillac passed, the engine howl reached one invisible claw out and down from the Chevy and tapped its right front tire. Blam! The tire blew out. Fwubba-da, 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 fwubba-da went the wheel rim on the road. "Wait!" Jerry wrestled with the steering wheel. The girls in the back shouted, stomachs tight. The boys looked up. "What?" "Whoa!" said Howard. "I think we got a blowout." The engine howl watched nervously as Jerry pumped the brake. For 2 or 3 seconds it felt Jerry's pulse surge and his breath catch as the car hurtled along, almost out of control. The engine howl swung over to the passenger side of the car and tugged just the slightest bit. Soon, Jerry brought the car to rest on the rough right shoulder of the road. "Everybody out," he called, and opened the driver's side door a crack. A semi-truck roared by, pulling at the door with its backdraft. Howard slipped out his side of the car and joined Jerry on the other. Jerry glanced down the long hill of the interstate. "I think maybe I should move the car over. This is awfully close to the traffic." "Nah," Howard said. "Look, the tire's barely damaged. We can still have it fixed if we don't ride on it anymore." "Aha," Jerry said. "Here, let me jack it up." Howard flexed his arms. Jerry opened up the very back seat. "Come on, Julie, Lisa. Everyone has to get out and stay on the grass." "What happened?" Julie asked. "We have a flat tire," Jerry said. "Oh." The girls clambered out. Jerry lifted up the seat, and there, beneath, arrayed in careful form, the spare tire and the jack awaited. "Here, I'll get the jack. You bring the tire." Howard grabbed the jack and tire iron and left Jerry to pull out the spare. Clack-a-clack-a-clack-a-clack. Howard pumped the jack with loud intensity. The engine howl felt the tiny shifts of movement upward, steel on steel, whereby Howard lifted the 2-ton station wagon. The engine howl swirled amidst the smell of the tire's hot rubber and the interstate tarmac. It felt the next 18-wheeler coming. Soon, soon. With carefully displayed arm strength, Howard twisted the tire iron, unscrewed the lug nuts, pulled the tire away, stood up and began to turn. "Hey, Jerry, bring me that spare tire." The last sound of his word was obliterated by the roar of a tractor-trailer screaming by. The engine howl felt Howard's body freeze in the 2-foot space where Howard stood between the 80-mile-an-hour metal and the Chevy behind him. It felt the suction of negative pressure in Howard's back teeth from the vacuum of air swept forward by the massive speed. For an eternity of 1 second, Howard teetered with only the slightest hair's breadth of control in his right front toe preventing him from getting sucked beneath the howling wheels. Howard saw, in excruciating detail, the flecks of dust on the side of the 18-wheeler's trailer, the half-glint of the afternoon sun on its amber sidelight flashing by, and the tail flap walloping against a rear bar that nearly swiped off his leg. Jerry only had time to say, "Whoa!" before it was all over. Howard stood, staring out across the very temporarily empty interstate. The engine howl sensed his brain chemistry change, and his neurons shift. "You okay?" Jerry asked. Howard nodded without saying anything, his breath having had no time to hyperventilate. Then he gasped. "That was kind of close. Let's get this tire on, quick." Jerry and Howard lifted the new tire on. Howard spun the lug nuts tight, this time making no show of the strength in his adrenaline-soaked muscles. He grabbed the jack and iron while Jerry rolled the old tire back. They slung them in the space beneath the seat. The pink tiger beat still lay on the floor. "Okay, let's go," Howard said. The teens climbed back in the car. "Can you turn on the air conditioning?" Lisa asked. Jerry flipped the AC on high. The boys had caught a tiny grasshopper, which they let go out the window when the girls screamed. The engine howl felt a surge of sex hormones in them all, except for Howard, who was still as a post, and Jerry, pulling out onto the interstate, who had not noticed. "That seemed kind of close, huh?" Jerry said, now going 70. "Yeah," Howard grunted. The engine howl watched him. The usual tart, sharp energy crackled back and forth in the back seats. The teenagers were pumping their fists at another passing trucker, who gave them a quick beep-beep with his horn. "All right," the boys called, while the girls squealed, "Yay!" No one noticed the dilapidated barns in the pasture flying by, or the clumps of cattle sheltering in a billboard's shade. Howard said nothing for a long time. Then he turned to Jerry. "The doctors say Joni is really sick." "Yes," Jerry said. "What do I do?" "Let her rest," Jerry said, then looked him in the eye for a long moment while the engine howl kept the car on the road. "Which would you rather have? A swimming pool, or her?" Another long moment. "Yeah, I guess you're right," Howard murmured. The engine howl smiled, then leaped upward and outside to hang on with one invisible claw to the top rope of the luggage bundle, eyes wide in the hot July wind, nostrils flared at 1,000 road scents, teeth bared as they tore down the highway at ridiculous speed.